Susie Allegri, great to have you on the show. Top human rights barrister, international lawyer, and a real original thinker about how to govern AI and the online world, really. It's great to have you on. Thanks for coming on the show. I've been reading your book, Freedom to Think. I think Kieran's been looking at your latest AI book as well. I was really intrigued at the analogies you drew. I mean, since the sort of growth of social media, I think there's been very obvious analogies with 1984, George Orwell's book. I really liked the way you also brought in Brave New World, because that really, really intrigued me, the way you relate to our reaction to online life, sort of almost lulling us into this tech-induced torpor. How do you think we can break out of it? Do you think we need to break out of it? But how do we break out of it?
I think we do need to break out of it. And it is, as you say, I found that, rereading both 1984 and Brave New World when I was writing my first book, I was just so struck with how prescient they are and how much they reflect the world we live in today as a result of the information environment that we're living with. Things like the hypersexualization of children, but also that kind of dumbing down, distracting us with pointless fripperies so we don't worry too much about serious matters. And I mean, I think for Brave New World as well, one of the things that really struck me was this idea that the people who started to think and question things too much got sent off to an island. And as somebody who grew up on an island, that really resonated for me, this idea of sort of islands as outcrops, if you like, of original thinking, because they could be separated off from the mainstream. I do think we need to really carefully consider what our information environment does for us. And it's something that when I started, first of all, writing about the right to freedom of thought, it came from, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, talking about political behavioral micro-targeting, the use of social media to sort of target people to change their voting behaviors. And what really struck me was that it's not necessarily about material that will radicalize people or change their political views. You can manage voter behavior by distracting them with cat videos so they don't get up off the couch, or reminding them that it's really dark and rainy out there. And so maybe, everything will be fine if they just stay at home and, watch another dog video, for example. So it's really about how our interactions with social media, our interactions with technology, can really powerfully distract us from our daily lives and the things that matter. And so it's not just about changing our minds, if you like. It's also just about the distraction economy.
Yeah. Kieran, over to you.
Sorry, I was too busy going through TikTok to what was
I just wanted to pick up one thing you said there, Susie, about distraction from things that matter. What does matter?
One of the things that matters, certainly to me, is, genuine human connection. And, I'm very lucky that I have a teenage child, and apart from, the occasional flare-up about whether or not her mother is a psycho because I want to take her phone away. She's also very good at reminding me, at the breakfast table, she'll kind of say, well, this is great, isn't it? Everybody's looking at their phone.
Yes, sorry, Kieran, I interrupted. Yeah.
No, I have the same. I have the same with my daughters. They call it our own hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But no, I've been sort of reading your new book on AI, and I was thinking, so you're sort of approaching it saying, the way we need to think about AI is has to be changed. We have to think about it through the sort of a lens of human rights, because that's how we figure out how you should use it and not use it, rather than let something happen and then say, well, is this killing anybody after the fact? But the thing I was sort of interested in your views, and obviously because you're a lawyer, how do you get to that point? So in the book you talk occasionally about sort of the need to ban things, sometimes ahead of time, and then also the things are being thrown up now that the courts will need to deal with, but of course the courts are notoriously slow and technology is notoriously fast. So how do we actually address these issues in a way that works for everybody?
Well, I think one of the ways we have to deal with it is not seeing it as a massive wall that we've got to deal with everything all at once. I think we need to pick off some small things. So there will be areas where it's quite easy to legislate. And one of the areas where we're seeing legislation happening quite fast around the world is on non-consensual image-based abuse, for example, or what's known colloquially as deepfake pornography. Um, you know, the creation of criminal laws to make sure that the people who create and distribute that sort of material will face criminal consequences can be dealt with quite discreetly, rather than sort of thinking, oh my God, we need a global overarching law that's going to control and dictate everything about our future with AI, otherwise we're all lost.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, and fundamentally,
carry on.
no, the big thing, which is always seems to be the gap, is the enforcement of it. So,
Yeah.
there's quite a lot of laws already in place, and there's more laws in place. But if it's not enforced, then what's the point? And it just goes on as usual. So, how do you deal with enforcement? And if I could sort of tie in, what did you think about the recent sort of enforcement of social media posts where we had these riots this year? And they enforced that. There was a big brouhaha recently about freedom of speech, and people have been given jail sentences because of social media posts. Is that adequate enforcement?
Well, I mean, in general, in terms of enforcement, I think you've hit the nail on the head. That I think one of the really big questions, and it's something that I tried to get across in the book, is that if we all look at the shiny AI, we're going to miss the fact that actually, in order to get any kind of regulation, you need resources, you need the rule of law, you need democracy. We need to protect those things. And those things require money. And it's one of the big challenges that you'll often see in the legal system, as in the medical infrastructure. This sort of, oh, look, we've got a shiny new technology that's going to make it all work for free. It's not true. These things cost money, and they require resources. They require human resources, and they require financial resources. And so you're not going to get enforcement in anything if you don't have that. So I think that's the first thing to think about. In terms of the enforcement and responses to the rioting over the summer, I think it showed a recognition of how potentially dangerous and inciting social media posts can be, and the fact that what is said online doesn't stay online; it spills over into our real worlds in very concrete and dangerous ways. One of the big issues, I think, with discussions around the internet is that when people talk about freedom of expression, freedom of expression means different things in different countries. Freedom of expression is protected internationally, and there are baseline protections for freedom of expression. But it also comes with responsibility. So while you have freedom of expression, that doesn't mean that you can use it to destroy the rights of other people. And so one way of protecting the rights of other people is criminalizing certain types of expression. But what we found with the internet, and I think it's possibly because of the dominance of the US in big tech and in the way the internet has developed, is this very much sort of First Amendment idea of freedom of expression. That freedom of expression means you can say absolutely anything, and anybody who tries to limit that is in some way, trampling
a criminal.
over your freedom of liberty.
Yeah.
But that is not how freedom of expression works. Certainly not in Europe. It's not how it works in international human rights law. And so I think, my impression of the responses to social media posts over the summer and their very real world consequences is that we are starting to see what the limits are to freedom of expression in entirely appropriate ways.
Well, I've got one more quick question for you, Susie, because I know we're moving on to other issues, but I was intrigued by what you said about human companionship being replaced by AI, and I've just been watching Subservience, the movie, where Megan Fox stars as an AI. She comes on the screen,
bear it.
He's going to have sex with her. So sex with robots, human companionship being replaced by technology. Why is this not a great thing, and what do we do about it?
I mean, in my view, this whole thrust, and it is a huge thrust in technology over the past couple of years, to sell AI chatbots, if you like, as a replacement for human connection. Whether it is, you can have an AI friend, you can have an AI girlfriend, boyfriend, you can even marry your AI. Isn't this great? It's going to solve the epidemic of loneliness. And to me, that's about corporate capture of human connection. And it seems to me like it's almost a form of corporate coercive control. Because what you're doing, rather than fostering connection, is mimicking connection in order to separate people off from their loved ones, to separate people off from their reality, and to leave them isolated and easily controlled. And going back to the question of litigation and enforcement of laws, we're already seeing, I mean, just in the past 6 months, there's been 2 big cases brought in the US by people about children's rights and children who have developed relationships or friendships with AI in ways that have been really seriously manipulative, dangerous, and controlling. And these are not isolated incidents. I spoke about a couple of other ones in my book, but if we don't get ahead of this issue very quickly, we are going to be, I think, in very serious trouble, and we won't have anybody to talk to about it, because we're all going to be off, stuck in our own. The echo chambers of the internet are nothing compared to the echo chambers of AI companionship.
I think and we were hearing last week, we were discussing very harrowing stories from deep fake sextortion scams targeting children, where they felt they were engaged in discussions with colleagues or members of the opposite sex from their schools, and they weren't. They were actually being targeted with very harrowing outcomes. I want to switch to a topic which is pertinent to what we're talking about. The Civil Liberties Group Union in America are asking police not to use AI to file reports. Before we go to that, something a bit more cheery. It's time for our Guilty Pleasure Online. If you really have any at all, Susie Allegri, what is your guilty pleasure online?
I'm afraid I am partial to doodle videos and also French castles.
French castles.
I think you're captured here by corporate. They're pulling you away from your family.
What about walking the walk? Not just talking the talk.
Throw it in the bin, Susie. Throw it in the bin.
We're all vulnerable to it.
Yeah.